It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of A Bank in Formation. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to Your Personal Bank Show. And I'll tell you what, folks, I've got to tell you, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm miffed. I'm peeved. I'm steamed. I don't know what you want to call it. I don't get overly frustrated with a lot of things, but I'll tell you what, I'm and especially during the Christmas season, what really, I guess, irritates me is I'm frustrated about, I'm going to talk to you about what I'm frustrated about. It has to do with small business, the shutdowns, the relief, lack thereof, taxes, that seem to we want to put on people who receive PPP loans, those types of things. But I guess what I'm really irritated by is it's happening right around the Christmas season, which is actually, I'm one of those people who love Christmas, okay? I know not everybody celebrates it, and it's not something that everyone particularly enjoys. And there's been a war on Christmas for quite a few years. And I guess I just enjoy everything about the season, the music, the get-togethers, I don't know, maybe the just general attitude a little bit about thinking about other people a little bit more. The gift, all of it, and I love all the whole package. Okay. And I love it. Like, I guess someone else would love sports, or they would love music or food or their family or things like that. So I don't enjoy it in terms of, in your face with somebody else. I feel saddened a little bit personally if somebody doesn't experience the season. Okay. And I don't want anybody to feel bad about because I'm excited about it or whatever. And it's not, I guess maybe it's almost part of my growing up in my childhood and how I was raised and stuff. And didn't particularly have great Christmases or anything, or even great family life. I had good. I'm not going to complain, but I don't know. It's just, I guess maybe it's my personality. I don't know. It's just the time of the year I enjoy looking back and thinking about where we've been, where we're going. It's a time to self-reflect. All those kinds of things. And when I see things happening that I think are unfair or, particularly this, it kind of bursts the bubble, if you will. It gets a little frustrating. So if Christmas isn't your thing, I understand. I wish it was more something you could, or find something about it that you could enjoy. And I would just say, as someone who does love the season, it's something, I'm not trying to offend anyone or anything. It's just, I would hope you'd be able to find some of that. Just like if you were a sports fan or a car lover who loves those kinds of things, are sad when somebody doesn't, or, wish that person was more, would appreciate it more. How's that? So that kind of thing. But what I'm really frustrated about, and I guess kind of got me worked up, is, and it started with this article I saw, over half of small business owners fear coronavirus will close their operations by mid-2021. It doesn't surprise me any. The past 9 months or so have been really rough, particularly on small business. A lot of the shutdowns and things that have occurred have been steered towards, unfortunately, I guess what you would call low-hanging fruit, things like restaurants and those types of things where, it's easy, I guess, they're visibly up front. You can see the activity, you can see what they're doing, and maybe it's easy for government leaders to put shutdowns on them. I don't know. We've seen situations with cases thrown out in court just recently here in California, I think in LA County, where there was a recent shutdown for outdoor dining. And the judge threw out the case because the county health board was unable to find any documentation that outdoor dining increases the risk of transmission of coronavirus. Good for them. They fought back. And again, it goes back to my general, I'm pretty, I guess you would say from a political standpoint, I'm fairly libertarian in my stance personally. So any time when there's any government interference or overreach, I'm generally negative to that. And I've said this before. I've gotten comments from people. Actually, I appreciate it. Some listeners, this is a money radio show. It's Your Personal Bank. We talk about that type of stuff. And I'm going to say, if you want to learn more about how Your Personal Bank works, I would recommend going to the yourpersonalbank.com. Like I said, it's yourpersonalbank.com. Listen to the previous shows. In fact, last week's show, I think Tuesday's show last week, or Thursday, I can't remember offhand, I went into the depth and the detail of how it works, kind of a good intro. So I'm going to encourage you to go there and listen to that, and that'll really give you a good idea. I'm going to touch on some more about your personal bank today, of course, but like I said, I really want to touch on this because, it's frustrating. And I've gotten, like I said, comments from listeners who've said they really appreciate some of my political comments, although this is a money show. And I've talked more about political stuff this year, certainly by far, more than at any other point in my career. I've been involved with the financial arena over 22 years now. And the reason is primarily because of the impact that the shutdowns and things that have had to our economy, to businesses, to our money has been significant. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. I think most people would agree. And I'm generally negative overall to the government interference or the what I would consider heavy-handed nature of how many of these things have been dealt with. Another great example, and this happened very recently, is one of the restaurants in California, of course, was shut down, couldn't provide any kind of outdoor or indoor or outdoor dining. And yet, literally, like you should show in the video, next door to her, there was a movie studio catering setup where they set up an outdoor dining thing, and it was like literally, tens of feet away, I guess. And that was perfectly okay. That was perfectly legal as far as the government rules, but she couldn't offer outdoor dining with her restaurant. That kind of stuff makes no logical sense. And again, that's where it comes from, that heavy-handed, top-down type of approach where, demand to shut down or do this or do that from people who don't fully understand the whole situation. I think most government leaders don't understand business, particularly small business. There's more evidence of that, particularly with these CARES Act and PPP provisions. They just don't really have any experience, knowledge, or understanding of how things really work. Also, there's really been no risk to their livelihood or income. I mean, I'm not aware of any government employees, for example, or political folks who have taken a pay cut or pay loss of income because of coronavirus or shutdowns or anything like that. So it's fairly easy to just say, well, you should do this when, well, your livelihood is not being threatened, where these small business owners, particularly, their whole life savings many times. This isn't just a way, I guess what, as a small business owner myself, that sometimes I struggle to express to folks who've never owned a business. And I've got a number of friends and clients and people I've worked with over the years who had been employees their entire careers up to a certain point and then decided to take the plunge into entrepreneurship, which I applauded. And in every case that I can think of, when folks made that switch, yes, it was challenging, it was exciting, it was exhilarating, all those things, all those emotions, good and bad, came up, welled up, and I've had numerous long-term talks with many of these folks. But the overwhelming response is, initially, particularly early on, when somebody makes that switch, the response is, wow, I had no idea it was going to be this intense, this hard, it would involve this much time and effort and money many times. So yeah, it's not easy to stake out a living on your own based on your, creating your own business. It's not. I'm going to tell you, it's just not easy. And when that's threatened, it's not just about the money and the income. It's your hopes, your dreams, your blood, sweat, and tears, if you put it. So that's why I'm passionate about this. I'm going to talk about this further with a few other things, and then we'll get into more about the financial stuff. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Hey, welcome back. I really was, if you heard me in the first segment, I'm pretty peeved about a few things, and it has to do with small businesses and the threat that they're, the massive threat I believe that they're really under, and the challenges that they've had to face this past year has been, well, unprecedented. And as I was stating earlier, I guess I'm particularly peeved because it's happening in a time of the year where I personally enjoy. I love the Christmas season. Again, I understand not everyone does, but I give you an idea. My wife gives me a hard time. she won't allow us to listen to Christmas music until Thanksgiving. I would do it sooner, obviously, but I respect her wishes because she doesn't want to hear it. And then because I hold off, then it's all Christmas music all the time until, New Year's. So, and I love all of it. I mean, and I think that's part of it because I'm the musician in me. Those who've been listening, I've played trombone, bass trombone all the way through high school, college, military, paid for college. I still, until COVID hit, played periodically, different jazz groups, churches, whatever, sometimes getting paid, sometimes not. That's fine. Just a passion of mine. So I love all types of music. And when it particularly comes to Christmas music, I love all of it. The traditional, the new stuff, the country, jazz, you name it. I like it all. Just rock and roll, soul, it doesn't matter. If it's good quality music, I have appreciation for it. And I guess, like I said, it's just a passion of mine. And to me, it's kind of like a rite of passage, or, each year it's just kind of going back to my old favorites and listening to those. And I love doing that. When things happen that frustrate me and it interferes in the time of the year where, I generally like to feel better, we'll put it that way, and reflect on the year and look forward to the next, I find it particularly irritating. And like I said, what I find particularly irritating is in my opinion, is the government overreach in many cases of shutdowns due to COVID, and not using a lot of common sense in many times, draconian measures many times, or just blanket measures. There's been cases, like I said, where it's been challenged in court. For example, in LA County, where they did a shutdown on outdoor dining, and then they challenged the Restaurant Association to challenge it in court. Good for them. More of that should happen. And the case was thrown out. They won because the county health board was unable to provide any statistical evidence or study showing that transmission rates were increased through outdoor dining. So, and then when you see situations where, like this recently, if you've paid any attention online, you've seen it, where this went viral. This restaurant owner, I believe in LA County, somewhere in California, was forced to shut down her restaurant, and then the next day, I think it was, literally right next to her, a movie studio set up a catering thing to feed their folks lunch in an outdoor setting, very similar to her restaurant. That was okay, but having outdoor dining in a restaurant wasn't. It's that kind of thing, that unfairness of the blanket restriction like that. That's what I've often said. Hey, political leaders and things like that can certainly suggest and recommend. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I've had no problem with wet mask wearing. In fact, I was early on saying some of that when it made sense, like when I'm indoors around other people, or when I'm at a place where a Costco or something like that where they require it. It's private property rights. They have the right to require anything they want. I've often said, if Costco require us to wear a purple tutu to go in to shop in their store, they have the right to do that. I also have the right not to shop in their store. I have no issues with any of those kinds of things. Where I have issues are, again, where there's these demands and these restrictions. If you're high risk and you have concerns, by all means, stay away, stay home, social distance, and wear the masks, and shelter at home, all those things. Absolutely. If you feel like you're a lower risk situation, or you've already had it, in my case, that's a situation, and I'm not in any high risk scenarios, I'm going to be smart about it when I'm, like I said, inside in a more crowded scenario. I wear a mask. I started wearing masks 2-3 weeks before it was required in Arizona, by the way. I was one of the early adopters because I'd had it. I'd been through it, just learning about it. Didn't know much about it. This is back in late March, I believe. And so I was being smart. And the statistics show that most people start wearing masks, doing things, something like 85%, before these mandates come down anyway. When rates go up, people know how to, we're adults, folks. I guess that's what it boils down to is I don't appreciate a babysitter. Not since I was probably, 12 or 14, probably 12, 13 years old. Since then, I don't appreciate I don't need a babysitter, right? And when I see these calls, that's another really frustrating thing for me too, is I think one of the biggest risks to our freedoms as Americans is the government bureaucracy, the government being too powerful, too much, too involved in too many things in our lives. And when I see these things where there's call for the government to do more, and politicians naturally want to do, if there's a problem, they want to try to fix it and all that. And frankly, many times the best thing they could do is do nothing. Maybe make some recommendations, but step back and let us adults be adults. Let us make decisions that make sense for us, make smart decisions that make sense for us. Okay? I guess that's what it boils down to. And if they had taken, I know that ship has sailed, but if that approach had been taken more seriously, maybe all the shutdowns wouldn't have happened or so extensive, and maybe all these businesses wouldn't be struggling so much. Certainly, I'm certain, like restaurants, for example, and stuff would have had reduced business. I'm confident. I'm absolutely convinced of that, because some people would choose not to go because of the potential risk or the risk to them, right? Others would. And the thing is, but it wouldn't be this draconian, hey, you can't do business, but yet next door you can't feed people, but next door they can because we made a rule. That's just ridiculous. And I hate to say this, but you start thinking about reasons why they're doing these kinds of things. Like I said, shutting down restaurants, for example, seems to be a low-hanging fruit, a visual, obvious thing that everybody can kind of see. So maybe the politicians feel like they're doing something at least. There could be more sinister reasons. Oftentimes, maybe it's a Democratic, we see this a lot, or Democratic leader, and I would probably venture to say a majority of those small business owners probably don't vote Democratic. I think that'd be realistic to expect. Is there some of that going on where it's political? I don't know. All I'm saying is it's very frustrating, and I hate it when I see the government get over-involved, in my opinion, and hurting people's lives, hurting people's futures, hurting their livelihoods, blood, sweat, and tears, all that kind of stuff. I feel unnecessarily in many times, okay? And it just could have been handled a whole lot better by making suggestions and recommendations, certainly, but not demanding and taking control and overstepping powers that, in my opinion, many times they don't really have, but yet they're taking anyway. And government, that's the history of government. It tends to try to grab more power over time, and bureaucracy builds and grows, and it's a self-completing thing. And that's why when people call for the government to do more, I'm like, you don't know what you're asking for. Okay? And like I said, a lot of this comes from, my background. If I'm first generation. My dad escaped from the Soviets. I'm half Hungarian. He escaped Budapest, Hungary, 1956. Literally the day before the tanks or hours before the tanks rolled in, when that was like the first crackdown before the wall came down. He escaped with his life, okay? And there's many stories about that. I know some other folks who've done those kinds of things. So when you have those kinds of experiences, or in your family, your heritage, or near it, you can understand where those kinds of people with those types of traumatic experiences, like my dad, where government, they're leery of it. How's that? Does that make sense? So like I said, I want to touch on a couple of things. We'll get into some more financial stuff, I promise. So stay tuned in the next segment.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back. I'll tell you what, I've been talking a lot about some of the frustrating things going on with the shutdowns, the new rounds of shutdowns. Well, it's hurting some small businesses, like this article I was just reading, talking about something like roughly half of small business owners over half actually, are afraid they may not make it through mid-2021 if things continue the way they're going. Why am I sharing all this? I guess it's a bigger picture, and I've had a number of folks respond and appreciate, like they said, some of the financial and the political aspects of what I've been sharing. And it really comes down to, what type of country do we want to live in? What type of government do we want to have? Do we want to have one that's more involved in our lives or less so? And this is a money radio show. This is a money show. What does that have to do with our money? Well, my response would be a lot. See, when government is more involved, take the government shutdowns we've had, they, in essence, whether intentionally or not, pick winners and losers. A perfectly obvious example is when a shutdown occurs, like it happened this spring, and it's happening again many times, many places throughout the country. You know, businesses that had more high touch, things like restaurants and nail salons and those types of, spas and, sporting events and, those kinds of things, gyms, whatever, they were hurt by all this, understandably so. Other types of businesses benefited tremendously. A lot of the tech things, Zoom and all these tools that we use much more now than, say, a year ago even, all benefited from this. Now, whether it was intentional or not, that's the end result. And if consumers are moving towards a certain direction, I mean, certainly working from home and things like that were things that were growing. It was vastly accelerated, of course, due to COVID and the shutdowns. And really, it was more about the shutdowns than the COVID, frankly. We've had other illnesses. We've had other pandemics, even in our lifetime. But what we haven't had is the shutdowns. And it has dramatically made dramatic changes. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. What I don't like about it is where it's mandated, from above, if you so to speak. I don't think that's the role of government. The role of government, if you look at the Constitution and things like that, is much more limited, at least in how our government was established and has been for, a couple of centuries. I know there's a number of people that, and it's obvious, it's been a growing amount, who a lot of times are referred to as progressives, who want to make changes, and many times significant changes. We're a very divided country because of that. What direction we're going to go, I don't know. I'm encouraged by many things that I see, but I don't know what's really going to happen. And how does this affect our money? Well, it can affect our money in big, big ways. And a lot of that is completely unpredictable. In other words, a government mandate, just what I'm trying to say, folks, is a government who can say, hey, all restaurants are shut down, for example, for a period of time, can easily also accomplish similar things if they choose to do so and say, IRAs are now taxable. What's to stop them from doing those kinds of things? Maybe because they want to generate more revenues, or they want to tax those accounts, for example. If they decide that's what they want to do and they have enough power to do it, what stops them from doing it? In other words, where does it end? You see what I'm trying to say? So when people call for more government action, more government involvement, I say that's like unleashing the tiger that you can't control later. And if you read any of the founding documents, one of the best books is An Original Intent by David Barton. It was changing. I read it over 20 years ago. Excellent book. You can get it on Amazon. Again, it's called Original Intent. Talks a lot about what the original intentions was of the Founding Fathers through the Declaration, Constitution, the Federalist Papers. And I know reading the Federalist Papers can be a little daunting, but that's a great place to start. And you start to get a much clearer idea of what the founders of our country intended for our country, and why we have many of the freedoms we have today still. And frankly, many are getting encroached upon over time, slowly, incrementally. It's kind of like a frog in a pot of water. You want to boil the frog. You don't boil the water and throw the frog in. No, you put the frog in cool, comfortable water, and you very slowly increase the temperature, and eventually the frog boils and never jumps out. And that's kind of the approach. Not just our government. Governments inherently, Jefferson talked about this a lot, inherently, naturally gravitate towards grabbing more power, okay? And when the government takes more power, obviously the people lose. It's a zero-sum game. They lose some freedom, don't they? And these loss of freedoms, again, may seem incremental, but over time they add up, and they can cause significant and serious impacts to our money. Now, there's wealth creation. There's a reason why the United States has more millionaires and things like that than any other country in the world, why there's more wealth creation, why we have a higher standing of living and things like that than any other country in the world, frankly, in the history of the world. Many, many factors. Now, I'm not saying everything's perfect. Don't get me wrong. There's things that can be improved upon. But to wholesale change what's been the most successful, the freest society and most financially successful society in world history seems foolish to me. Why dramatically mess with something that's worked better than anything else that's ever existed? And that's what it really boils down to. So our money, our ability to create wealth as individuals, as businesses and things like that, is directly tied into the freedoms that we currently enjoy and the ability to go and make some money, the ability to choose to reduce our taxes through, legal means, do the legal means. By the way, that's not true in many other countries. I've worked with business owners who have business in Australia, for example. I'll use an example. It's illegal in Australia today, and has been for some time, to actively, as a business or an individual, to actively try to reduce your taxes. If the equivalent of the IRS in Australia, I'm not sure what they're called, but if they determine that you are taking financial actions, and I know a number of financial advisors who work with Australian clients, and this is true in other countries too, don't get me wrong, not just Australia, but if they can prove that you took these actions with the primary purpose of reducing your taxes, redistributing your money or reallocating funds or whatever, you can get fined for that. Now, I don't know about you, and I would assume most of the people in the listening would probably agree with me that is not the kind of country they want to live in. At least listeners to Money Radio, right? In other words, you want to build your wealth. There's some certain rules. You want the tax rules. You want to follow those. You don't want to break rules and things like that. But if I can reposition funds, and that's a lot of what your personal bank, one of the main benefits that attract people to it is, it allows you to reduce your income taxes. I mean, that's a powerful thing. And if it's determined that at some point, I don't know, down the road where the government determines, hey, that's not a legal activity to move my money from this account to that account because I want to pay less taxes, income tax, you see where my point is, where the freedoms that we enjoy are so important. In essence, you're going to pay more tax, aren't you? This is the kind of thing is why make this is so important. I got a couple other points I want to make at the end here that I think are powerful, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
All right, we're rounding third, and I'm talking a lot about, our money and freedoms and how that impacts our money going forward. If you missed it, go to yourpersonalbank.com, go back and listen to the show, the portions you missed, or any of the previously recorded shows. And you can listen to them at any time you like. And again, I want to thank, I've had a number of listeners reach out to me, thanking me for some of the thoughts in terms of not only the money, but the political aspects of it. And again, I don't normally talk a lot about the politics, but the reality is 2020 has kind of forced us, due to shutdowns and things like that, to discuss it because, it has really caused an impact on many people's lives and their money, of course, obviously. So the last point I really want to make about this, and like I said, the point I guess I've been making for the entire show has been that more government power means less freedom for us as individuals. And these reductions in freedoms can impact our money, our economy, our ability to create wealth, keep wealth, things like that. And some of the examples of where I believe top-down, heavy-handed bureaucratic approaches to things just don't work is the Paycheck Protection Program, for example. this was passed with the intention, or at least that was the stated intention, I'll say, of helping out small businesses retain their employees through what initially was told to us would be a short-term shutdown, which has obviously turned into much more than that or much longer. The problem is most of the bureaucrats, people involved in government, have no real connection or understanding of how the real world works. There's Wall Street and Washington don't understand Main Street. And for example, the Paycheck Protection Program allowed loans for up to something like $10 million. Well, if you have, and you could pay, it would help offset payroll for a period of about 3 months. If you have payroll in the range of $10 million over a 3-month period, I don't think anyone would argue that's a small business. That's a pretty solid sized business. Could be quite a large business, frankly. And so the fact that that high a number was even allowed to protect quote unquote small business just doesn't make any sense. Okay? No common sense going on here. Okay? Now, of course, the more connected, wealthier, there's all kinds of articles, and you read them, talk about how a majority of the funds went to a lot of these bigger, medium-sized and bigger businesses and more well-connected businesses. A couple examples, Governor Newsom of California received something like nearly $3 million through, he has several businesses. I don't think he probably did anything wrong legally or anything like that, but it looks bad. Apparently Tom Brady got something like $1 million through the Paycheck Protection Program for his businesses. I don't think anyone would argue that Tom Brady's impoverished. Okay. Or his wife. Recently, by the way, he just bought $1 million yacht. He got $1 million PPP loan that's probably going to be forgivable. You want to connect the dots? I'm not saying Tom Brady's a bad guy or broke any rules. He saw an opportunity, took advantage of it. Okay, I get it. But is it ethically the right thing to do? And I struggle with that. I find that frustrating when you have businesses, like I was talking about in the earlier segments, where these restaurants, these are mom and pops that are just trying to survive. And many of them won't. So these articles are talking about many expect half or more of the small businesses will be gone by the middle of next year because of all this. I saw another article here recently that if there was another PPP2, they would call it Paycheck Protection Program 2, and they said that something like 82% of small businesses would look for loans something like well under 100,000. See, my opinion is 100,000 or something probably should have been the maximum loan. Okay? That's small business. If you had 30 or 35,000 in payroll for 3 months, that'd add up to about $100,000. That wouldn't be a really small business, but it would be, it'd be a local small business probably, right? Or less. And that's why I was supporting some of the local organizations that were raising funds and grants for what would be considered microloans for the true small business, the economic engine that drives something like half of the business in our economy in America. Okay. The people that really make, half of what makes it work. All right. I think next year we're going to see some significant impact of having a much less robust small business community, truly small business community. I'll give you another example where the government is just totally out of touch in terms of small business. The Small Business Administration themselves still defines a small business as any business with less than 500 employees. Folks, I don't think anyone would argue a business with 300-400 employees is probably be a small business, would it? And with technology the way it is now, you could have a much fewer employees and create much more gross revenues. You could have an extremely large business with less than that number of employees. It's such an antiquated way to measure the size of a business. Obviously, gross revenue should be a factor. Number of employees may be a factor, but there's so much better ways of measuring. But that's how the government looks at it, and they just keep cruising along like a horse with blinders they don't even realize, they don't know what they don't know. I think a lot of this isn't even intentional. It's just there's such a lack of understanding, a lack of connection. Here's what I wish. Maybe this will be my year-end wish. I wish the government would be less involved in our lives. And in the times that they need to be, that it's necessary, that they would actually go to some of the people that were actually involved, maybe understood what they were doing. Let's use the example of the small business world. Would go to the small business leaders, the true small business leaders, and say, what do you guys need? The local chambers of commerce, the Better Business Bureaus, and those kinds of outfits where you're dealing with the real small business owners and say, what would be helpful? What could we do? Or, and I can tell you what one of some would be is just get out of our way. The response I can tell you from the small business community would be just leave us alone and let us do what we do. Stop regulating us to death. Stop taxing us to death. And just stay out of our way. Let us provide the products or services that we do. Let us focus to our customers. Let our customers be happy. We can pay whatever the reasonable amount of tax is, what's fair, and just stay out of our way. Let us follow our passion, because any successful business, particularly any successful small business, is successful primarily for one reason and one reason only. And that reason comes down to this. They provide a product or service that people want. And the better they provide that product or service, the better service they provide, the better price point they can offer, and everything else, the more successful they become. It's really that simple. And if the government bureaucrats and everybody else would just get out of our way, small business could thrive, and you would see an economic boom unlike any we've seen in our lifetime. As always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank Show. Contact us at yourpersonalbank.com for more information, and we'll look forward to talking to you again next week.
Listen Tuesday at noon and Thursdays at 1 for more information on Your Personal Bank. Contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.